Hey Martin, how you doing, man? I'm doing
Yeah,
good.
I'm good. There you go. There you are. Perfect. Lovely. So I'll just crack right on with my questions. Um,
Yeah,
so just to begin with, what type of research did you do in preparation for the role?
this is sorry. Here in my kitchen,
Sure.
this is a bottle of olive oil. I just walked over it. A lot. This was well, that was one of the kind of joys of doing a project like this.
Mm,
Was the research and having such a wealth of knowledge about this time period in American history. It's obviously very well documented. Having said that, this is a part of the space program that I wasn't familiar with. I think a lot of people in my generation, especially people younger than me,
mm,
obviously know Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, Buzz Aldrin landing on the moon, Apollo 11,
mm,
and that's kind of what I knew going in.
mm,
So it was a whole new world for me to not only learn about the Mercury Seven, but
mm,
how the Mercury Seven were chosen. Like
mm.
the fact that that wasn't a given that they would choose test pilots, what a test pilot in the 1950s, 1960s meant,
Yeah,
how
sure.
dangerous that was.
Hmm.
Also, just the inception of the space program itself and an answer to, the race to space. It
Hmm.
was just a wealth of research and knowledge that actually the entire cast as a unit kind of would pool
Mm.
as often as we could leading up in the pre-production phase to production.
Yeah.
Um, each astronaut had a book that they wrote, about their experiences with NASA, experience with Mercury.
Hmm.
Shepard was the only astronaut who actually didn't have an autobiography. He had a biography written about him posthumously, which says a lot about his character. He was never really comfortable with the fame and
Mm.
celebrity and just noise that came around the whole thing.
Yeah, sure.
Um, so in a lot of ways, aside from reading Tom Wolfe's book, in addition to the
Mm.
script, and then all the other actors reading their astronauts' respective autobiographies, a lot
Hmm.
of the other actors I know on the cast also read Shepard's because it was such a warts and all kind of take on the man because it was
Yeah, yeah.
written years after he had passed away and
Mm.
not by him.
Yeah, sure.
So you got a real good insight into who he was, a real good insight into what the kind of mentality and relationship with fear these guys had um, as test pilots. So we just really front loaded all that research. And then it came down to, trying to find footage of him, which I mean,
Mm.
there's footage of all these guys,
Yeah.
trying to incorporate mannerisms, tone of voice and stuff, kind of cosmetic things like that towards,
Hmm.
I guess, the end of it. And then at the end of the day, I think it's
Mm.
really important that you kind of then hope that that's seeped enough in your system that you can throw it out the window and
Mm.
focus on the character that you're doing from the script. So that was
Absolutely.
really the research process. It was a lot and it was educational. I mean, I really enjoyed all of that.
Mm. So as you said, the research feeds into the character, and from my perspective, at least, the character, the man, seemed to be a massive contradiction. What elements of his persona did you use to get a foothold in terms of your performance and your portrayal?
Well, they illustrated Mark Lafferty's script, did a great
Mm.
job of kind of illustrating that duality that he was going to
Mm.
be, it's almost like a reveal that this guy is married,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
because you see him in bed with, another woman and joking
Yeah.
with the guys and drinking. So that framework was already there before I kind of launched into the research. And then,
Mm.
uh, that was something that was, again, reading Light This Candle by Neil Thompson
Mm.
was real, did not shy away from that at all.
Mm.
It really illustrated that. And I mean, I feel like, I don't have any family that comes from, Marine or Navy or Air Force. I don't come from a military family. It's my family unit directly. So,
Mm.
even just learning about kind of chain of command that
Mm.
happens in the army and
Mm.
everywhere else that then
Yeah.
trickles down through a military family as far as authority
Mm.
and kind of the ability to compartmentalize because Shepard never actually saw combat in World War II, but he was on aircraft carriers during World War II. And all these guys come from that generation, the greatest generation that fought in the war, wanted to fight in the war.
Yeah.
Glenn fought in the Korean War. He's an ace pilot. So like there was already societally, we're talking way back in the 1940s and 50s when these people
Mm.
were like, in their teens and 20s. There
Yeah.
was just a different kind of compartmentalization of, well, these men go off, they risk their lives. What they do on the side is, not something that's spoken about.
Mm.
And somehow that arrangement, at least in Shepard's case with his wife, worked well enough that they stayed together all the way through his death. And it's not like Louise, some people have asked me, do you think she knew about the affair? She absolutely did.
Yeah,
you know, and it was, and yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was a trade-off, I guess, in some kind of, trade-off of like, well, when he comes home, he is a committed father and a loving husband, and he's, doing these, extraordinary things that put him and our family under a lot of pressure and scrutiny. So it was some kind of agreement. So, there was a lot of that in the research. There was a lot of that in the script. And playing that, I mean, that was one of the most attractive parts of playing him, is you got to, oscillate between the different facets of, and faces that you wear, depending on the situation, depending on the company.
So, in your opinion, how much truth is there in a statement? He says something in episode 2. Someone says to him, when you want someone to look at your life or look back on your life, how would you like it to be seen? And he said, I'd like to travel. I think he says, I want to go fast and I want to be left alone. So how much truth do you think there is to that statement? I thought that was quite an interesting thing to say in the show.
I do too. There was a lot of different alts. We actually did a lot of different lines. So it was always, I want to go fast. And then there was other ones that are on a pretty broad spectrum that are all true, which is kind of a testament to how complex he is. One was about, women. One was about being a husband. One was about shying away from the spotlight, which is the one that's in the show. And I think that sums up all those things. And I think it's absolutely true. I think I want to go fast. I want to be first. I want to be the best. It was in the DNA of all of the Mercury Seven. It was in the DNA of every test pilot that was alive in the 1950s and 60s, period. So that's just par for the course. The other half of that, I want to be left alone, was something that, wasn't necessarily unique to Shepard, but if you put him like on a spectrum with like, say, John Glenn, they certainly are the yin and yang of that kind of mentality. I think he valued his privacy. Like I said, he didn't write an autobiography. I mean, he made it all the way to his death without writing his own account of his experiences with NASA, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, nothing, So I think that's the thing. He wants to go out. It's a personal challenge for him, pushing the limit, finding the line. All that's a personal sport for Shepard. It doesn't matter about the accolades. It doesn't matter about the legacy. It doesn't matter about the heroism. It's a personal challenge and a personal best that he wants to keep improving and keep pushing and keep going. So, the fame, the celebrity, although I'm sure it had its perks that he indulged in frequently, was never really the impetus for him doing it. And I think if he had it his way, he could do all the shit without, the distractions.
Yeah, totally. So looking more broadly at Philip Kaufman's film on the subject, which many people consider to be definitive in terms of the subject matter itself, to what extent do you think the series expands on that legacy or maybe pays homage to it? What do you...
The film?
In terms of... Yeah.
I mean, we have more real estate. You know what I mean? We have like 8 hour-long-ish, 40 minutes to an hour-long episodes to really get into the personal lives and personal drama of these men, where the movie had 2.5, 3 hours, So we just have a slight advantage of time and space to really get into the weeds when it comes to how this massive kind of fame and celebrity impacted these people on a more human level, instead of leaning into the excitement of touring the country and all of a sudden being these political figures and these aspirational figures, like that's in there, but it's a lot more what happens on the other side of that, and showing, I think, the other dimension of having to live up as a person, people who were never signed up for an occupation that would have remotely this amount of fame, all of a sudden thrust into a Beatles-like, celebrity. And also, the people that were famous, like Charles Lindbergh and Chuck Yeager, the people these guys idolized, they were famous for things that they had done. Like they were famous for breaking the sound barrier, fighting in the war. These guys became overnight celebrities for something they had yet to do, and I think that really fucked with them. Like it messed with them, especially amongst their peers. You've got, out of 180 applicants, it's winnowed down to these 7 guys. So everybody's jealous of them. Everybody wanted to be a part of the space program. And then, to see them get slapped on plastic lunch boxes all over the world before they've really done anything gave them a weird kind of complex. So there's all that inner turmoil, I think, that our show gets to expand upon, even though the timeline of events is roughly the same in the movie, because it follows the same source material from Tom Wolfe's book.
Absolutely. So in terms of, in my opinion at least, space travel still stands apart as one of man's greatest achievements. So how important do you consider the show to be within the context of today's global situation? How important is it in terms of maybe what it represents or what it tries to extol? Or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's important directly and kind of indirectly. I'd say directly when it talks to as it pertains to space exploration. It's fascinating to see how this program in America started. How it started from a race with the Russians, where they decided to pool their astronauts, even the inception of the phrase astronaut. All these kind of this prequel to the world that we know now with Mercury and Richard Branson and Elon Musk, and especially coming out, this year, or earlier this year, we had, the first manned SpaceX launch back in March. So it's like this kind of incredible bookend to have our show come out and be like, this is how this started in this country, and this is where we are now. It's an amazing kind of scope here. And then indirectly, one of the things that I think is really, timeless about the show is it shows what we can accomplish when we all work together to achieve the same goal. And back in the 60s, that was, a very different landscape. The government curated a very wholesome image of these men to hold them up on a pedestal to a point of like infallibility, right?
Sure.
That's not so much how stuff works now, thankfully. But at the same time, going to the moon, even going to space, seems completely impossible. We were so far behind the Russians. We were just starting our space program in reaction to them putting a satellite in orbit. So we were so far behind. It's so dangerous. It demanded, inventing new science that didn't exist in our country at the time. And without full public support and keeping our foot on the gas, it would have never happened. So, in that regard, in a more metaphorical sense, I think, the show is timely because there's so many things that seem insurmountable right now. Everything from, social injustice to climate change. And these are issues that are going to take full public support, not letting our foot up off the gas to kind of achieve what right now is seemingly impossible.